either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And we return to a beloved director for our anti-romance movie, or kind of anti-romance. Some would say it's my first love of Japanese cinema. We're doing Takashi Miike's First Love.
Of course. And for those of you who are trying to Google to find this movie, please make sure you include that it is a 2019 movie.
Or just add Miike to
Or add Miike to it, because boy howdy, there's a ton of movies and TV shows with the variation of First Love in the name. I had a hot second to try and find it, because the movie poster also wildly varies depending on what site you're looking at.
Yeah, and while there are a lot of other Miike movies that definitely fit the anti-romance theme,
sure,
we went with First Love to do something a little more recent and accessible than, say, something like Audition or one of his more obscure ones, which definitely are more anti-romance.
Definitely, and this is, again, a very masterful blending of violence, comedy, and romance that Takashi Miike's gotten pretty good at over the years.
Yeah, and we also wanted to do a first date-ish gone wrong.
Very true. And in case you're wanting to watch along, this one is free on Prime at the moment. So,
yes. So First Love, written by Masa Nakamura, starring Takashi Miike.
Of course.
It's starring
I believe it's directed by Takashi Miike, though. I don't think it stars him.
No, I don't. This is one he doesn't star in.
No.
It's starring Masataka Kubota as Leo, Sakurako Konishi as Yuri or Monica.
Yep.
Becky as Julie.
I love that name. That's a great acting name.
Shota Sometani as Kaze, or Kase. And Nao Omori as Otomo.
Yep. And I had a hell of a time trying to find stuff on some of these actors and actresses.
Yeah, but Nakamura has done a lot with Miike. He started in 1996 with The Way to Fight, and his first 5 movies were with Miike, as well as one we've covered previously, Sukiyaki Western Django, and as well as later on, as well as not Miike, but the live action Dororo.
Yep. So found him, knew those, enjoyed those.
And we won't introduce Miike because this is like the 4th or 5th movie we've covered with him.
Yeah, the fact that you don't have a shrine already set up somewhere in your house is amazing.
Just my Zelda shrine, which might end up becoming a Neon Genesis Evangelion shrine.
An evolution.
But Kubota was Ogura in Miike's version of 13 Assassins, as well as he was Koyosata in Rurouni Kenshin live actions.
Yep, I did enjoy that movie.
As well as Kaneki in the Tokyo Ghoul live action. And Smokey in the High and Low movies, which are on my list at some point, but I think they're on Amazon.
Yeah, I haven't got to those.
Yeah. Konishi, on the other hand, hasn't really been in a lot outside of Netflix's recent Burn the House Down, but promising young actress.
I'm hoping to see more. Enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. Becky has been in a few Pokemon movies, as well as the Detective Conan one of the Detective Conan live actions.
If I'm being very honest with you, the Detective Conan was the only one I'd seen that Becky had been in, and I won't lie, I did not recognize it until I looked it up.
Yeah, she definitely has a distinct face for this movie, and very iconic.
And as close as Detective Conan is thematically to this movie, somehow these characters didn't match, so I missed it entirely.
Yeah. As for Tani, he was Izumi in Parasite, the live-action ones.
Of course.
As the God Will, another Miike movie.
Yeah.
MC Show in Tokyo Tribe, which at some point I am going to get us to watch this.
I have no doubt.
As well as he's been a voice actor in Wolf Children, Belle, Suzume, and The Boy and the Beast.
Yeah, I knew some of the work from the voice acting, but haven't seen a whole bunch of the other actual live-action ones, so this was fun.
Well, also As the God Wills is a live-action, too.
That's true.
Omori needs no introduction, as he is Ichi and Ichi the Killer in the shitty prequel Ichi.
Yes, which we have covered the absolute hell out of.
Yes. And no notes for this, no special dives for me on this one, so...
No, and as hard as I tried to find some more fun tidbits, because I love a fun tidbit, including just, the fun trivia that sometimes IMDb has for it. Despite this being a Miike movie and having some big names attached to it, there's not a lot. This is just a fun movie. Even the critics didn't have a whole lot of interesting input for me.
Well, good. It'll be original.
It will be, actually.
So before we get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Today we have a beer from the Lost 40 Brewing called Double Love Honey. Appropriate.
Yeah, close enough I could get. We don't have a good selection of sake, or a great selection of sake here.
No, and Lost 40 is always delicious.
Yeah, and they really don't drink in this movie either.
They don't have time.
There's one person who does in the
beginning.
So.
Well.
Cheers.
Cheers. Made with local Arkansas honey.
Ooh. Amazing.
Fancy pantsy.
But First Love opens on a boxer getting ready. Second movie this season that we've covered that has didgeridoo music.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you brought this up. The music is by someone who you know. This is Koji Indo, and he is best known for his work on Miike's 13 Assassins, Audition, and Gozu. So music that we have heard before, and he's very good at what he does. He's very good at taking Miike's insistence on having something that is a little bit more Japanese, but modern twists. And we hear that really well in this one. However, I'm aware that there is a traditional Japanese instrument that does sound a lot like the didgeridoo to a Western ear.
Okay, so maybe it's not a didgeridoo.
I think the intent is for this to not be a didgeridoo. However, and unfortunately, this is a movie that is a Canadian-Japanese hybrid movie. This was a joint effort production-wise.
Okay.
From a funding standpoint, anyway. Which means that it released first in Japan, and then almost immediately it was also premiered in Canada. And I think that everyone in Canada, and I think also me here in America, heard this and thought, didgeridoo. Interesting choice.
Yeah, same. And I mean, maybe that's why when we did Mushishi, the live action, that's what that instrument was.
It 100% was.
Okay.
It's not actually didgeridoo. It is I'm aware, it's another instrument, and I understand that there's a lot of overlap with instruments and how they've all evolved kind of simultaneously, and there's inspiration on each other. My husband gave me a spiel. I listened to it. I immediately threw that information out of my brain because in my head, all I could hear was, wow, this is a really weird didgeridoo.
Just go tell him to play his farty slide horn.
He does. He will be playing that Thursday.
I do like this opening because it's setting up a tough and dedicated and relatively modest boxer. Yes. I mean, it doesn't have like an intensity to it, but it's just like kind of going through the motions.
I also, especially since we recently did a movie with a guy who's like, my whole goal in life is to fight, with the Yakuza TV shows. Mm-hmm. I like how this one handled the fighting scenes so much better. Yeah,
well, and it does a good job of setting the mood of what the movie's going to be like, where it's editing him knocking out the dude, and we're talking about Leo, by the way.
Yeah.
As well as a decapitated head rolling out of an alleyway.
Yeah.
Which is, it has that nice little bit of Miike comedy where the eye's blinking still.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like two different kinds of danger, one within the ring and one on the streets of Japan.
And the way that the boxing scene is edited is, despite the fact that it is very blatantly obvious that the actor took a lot of time and effort to get bulked up for this, and he did take some boxing lessons, he is not a boxer. It's very obvious, which is why the editing works really well here. We get a lot of fast cuts, we get a lot of dodging, the movement from the camera is very quick and blurry. It adds to the suspense and builds this up so that way, even though the actor isn't very good at boxing in real life, he doesn't have to be. He looks cool, and it's a good tension scene to like show the duality of what his life in the ring and the world outside is like.
I'll have to get you to watch Shinya Tsukamoto's which one is it? Bullet Fist? It's not something like that. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Okay, cool.
But it's got similar vibes to that.
I would be very interested. I enjoy a good fight movie more so when it's not so heavily focused on just the fight.
Yeah.
This is a great way of like having this be a huge part of his life, really cementing it into us. Like he's spending all of his time boxing. He's not that good at it, but he's not that bad either. This isn't like a hopeless dream.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that it's putting him in perspective of which one his coach tells him, without drive, you'll eventually lose.
Yes.
And I think that's a good way of setting him of like, he's just going through the motions. He kind of fell into boxing, but it's not like his quote unquote passion.
Exactly.
And also, I do like the weapons disguised as golf clubs. I think that's always a cool little touch.
This is a fun one because Miike's covered plenty of other Yakuza and gang-based movies before. I think this one, he is less creative for Miike, but more creative than other Yakuza-based movies as far as weapons go. We have a nice rounding of illegal gun, illegal tasers, random things used as weapons.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a good balance of like interesting but not too fanciful.
Yeah. Well, it also sets up the seedier side of the movie with the Yakuza potentially supplying the Filipino drug dealer and their boss getting out of prison. Very typical Yakuza trope that
I do love that.
we covered in Miike or in the Like a Dragon Yakuza show.
Yep, a big trope. One of my favorites is I've gotten out of prison. Where's my bitches at?
But also it starts setting up, and I'm 100% pulling from Tom Mess's Agitator book a little bit.
Okay.
Is this movie's about a lot of outsiders, and that'll become more apparent as we get through it. So,
sure.
I mean, obviously we've got the Yakuza, so kind of outside of the
normal. Outside of the law.
Yeah, but also Leo in his current world is a little bit of an outsider because he's interviewed for a promising young boxer for Tomorrow's Champions.
Yeah,
and we get the backstory that he was abandoned as a baby, setting him up further as an outsider. He's an outsider within the thing that's quote unquote his bread and butter.
Yeah.
And also an outsider because he's an orphan.
And he's frustrating his coach because his coach is like, you're not that bad. Like, a huge part of boxing, and I do like the movie, like, very lightly touches on it, is that, like, you kind of have to be entertaining and self-promoting. Like, you can't just, like, be a guy who shows up, wins, and leaves and not expect to, like, get booked for things. Like, that's boring for people. They want to take risks. They want to be invested in this fighter. They want people to feel like they know the guy. They want to be able to root for him. And so this coach is like, you have to at least be happy you won.
Yeah.
Like, stand there and be like, yay, me.
Some kind of showmanship. Have some type of, like, good photo afterward at the end.
And I like that, like, even though we don't go super into the whole boxing world, having those little touches also, I think, shows off what type of, like, slump Leo's in. Like, he's almost depressed with his everyday life, despite being like, no, I've got it fairly good. I'm a fairly good boxer. You know, I've got my own place. I'm doing okay. And he just doesn't seem to be happy in any way.
No. And I mean, really early on, like 5 minutes into the movie, he's knocked out in his next bout. As we cut to some spaced out chick.
Yes, very.
And I do like this because it continues the kind of weirdness of Miike where she's definitely seeing shit. She's not in her right space.
Yes.
And we're introduced to kind of her where her mind wants to go. She's seeking this man named Ryuji, but we don't know 100% yet. Which, honestly, it's there's some interesting scenes with this because you get that little bit of like Miike horror, in it with the sheet rising up and the dirty looking old man.
It's so the old man is so scary for the majority of this movie, and I loved that. It's such a great touch of Miike's horror because Miike's humor really only works as like a break in like, and not even like a haha break, but more of in like a, wow, okay, that was so unexpected. I now have to laugh because I don't know what else to do with this feeling.
Yeah.
And that only works if he adds his specific type of like spook, horror, or gore. And we've already known that, like, especially since we start with the boxing and the knockout, we're like, okay, we're gonna have the Miike gore most likely. Check. Having this extra level of horror adds a more interesting element than just like, oh, it's gonna be another gore fest Miike film.
It reminds me a little bit of in Audition, the burlap sack that you see a little bit of.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say this is anything brand new for Miike, especially if you, like us, kind of beaten this horse to death. But I do think that there's a lot of fun elements that he has, like, mastered throughout all of the other movies, especially if you've, like, been following his career and, like, been, like we have, kind of diving through a bunch of his different films. So having, like, these themes be reintroduced back around, and arguably I'd say polished a little more each time, has been fun to, like, see that cycle as opposed to, like, oh, this is brand new, it's not like anything else he's done, fully fresh. No, this is a Miike film through and through, but it's a little more polished.
Yeah.
There's a few, like, pieces that he's definitely held back, which I think elevates it a little bit.
Yeah, he doesn't go back to his old days of, like...
It's not too showy.
Yeah, it doesn't go to, like, Visitor Q with its level of sexuality and violence.
But all of the elements are there.
Yeah. And you do feel a little bad for Monica in this bit, because that's who we get introduced to, the girl who's not doing so well with Julie beating her, and it's kind of we get real quick, and I know it's very exposition-y, but it's kind of necessary to explain who she is real quick, where she's sad and weak, but she's being whored out to pay off her father's debt, and she's a junkie, so she's in a constant cycle of just being screwed over by the world, basically.
Yeah.
And even then, after she's beaten, she's left alone as our title card appears.
And, like, not even truly alone. She's just on the floor when the gal who just beat her up and then is like, "Oh, you're so pathetic. Let me go see if I can get you something to help. Do you want drugs?"
Yeah. Well,
and then she's like, goes around the corner, has a full conversation about how she's an ass and how much she hates this girl. She's 5 feet away. She's not even, like, in a different room proper. She's just, like, left her on the ground and then went around the corner and was like, "Man, can you believe this girl?"
Yeah, and then goes and gets food.
Yeah, it doesn't even bring her drugs. She's just like, "No."
Yeah.
JK.
Well, and also this little bit of just... I like where they put the title cards in this movie, because seeing Ryuji, it kind of puts this a little parallel idea of, okay, she loves this guy potentially, but we don't know 100% because he's not explained at this point.
True. Very true.
And then we cut to the Yakuza and the cop, which Dirty Cop and Yakuza are going behind the gang's back.
It's very traditional, like, oh man, this is going to be a crime drama sort of thing. How are we going to set it up? Pretty standard, but done with the Miike flair. There's a little bit of Miike humor happening, which I liked. Dark, subtle.
Yeah. And also, I mean, to give them names, the Yakuza is Kase and Otomo is the cop.
Yeah, but let's be real, especially cop. He's just cop.
But I also like how they set it up of old must make way for the new, so kind of dooming the legacy of their boss who just got out.
True, where they're like, well, we've been doing so good without him, why do we need him back?
But also setting up issues with the Chinese, implying danger for Leo as he goes to work at a Chinese restaurant. All the outsiders are set up. We got some Chinese triad chick in there complaining that the Yakuza ain't shit.
Yeah, which is, real brave. Hanging out there, But okay, you do you, girl.
Yeah, well, it also sets up Leo as a bit more of an outsider of the abandoned as a baby Japanese boxer working in a Chinese restaurant.
As the delivery guy, like, super low. And, like, he's not even proper the delivery guy. Every time he turns around, they're like, can you go do this thing? It's, like, clearly not in his job description.
Peeling century eggs.
Yeah. And they're like, he's a boxer. Surely he can even do that.
Yeah. And honestly, we haven't heard much dialogue from Leo in this at all. Maybe 1 or 2 lines.
Yeah, but I kind of like that in this instance, because where other times it feels like the main character is, like, being brushed over, because we've had enough time spent, like, actually looking at Leo, it feels more like he's just depressed and, like, maybe is a guy who just doesn't have a whole lot to say, as opposed to, like, oh man, I really don't know anything about him, I wish he would say 2 words. But it gives more of a cool but isolated guy sort of vibe. Yeah,
well, and the way he's portrayed is very much going back to the Yakuza game franchise. That's how Kiryu is. Man, a few words, stick up his ass a little bit. Yeah. But not depressed.
Yeah. This one, swap the stick for depression.
But I do like that while we're trying to get introduced to Leo, he's given the examination and told that he has a large brain tumor, building up the drama. And when he was sitting there thinking, he's like, he didn't hit me that hard, it was just a lucky punch. And he's just so focused on that event that you can kind of see, like, whatever little hope he had.
Yeah, gone.
It's just like, okay, well, he's like, I'm sure it was, but also we're given that, hey, he's got a short life expectancy now with no operation. It's the end of what little career he had going.
And I won't lie, this is some pretty stellar acting from him as well. Like, this is very convincing. Like, you can really see, like, all of the, like, potential hope or even the last bits of, like, life really just drain from his face with this scene.
Oh yeah, he and Monica both, and that's why
really, like, kick it out of the park.
Yeah, they really do a good job with the subtleties of this movie. But also, it's that light goal that we had for him in the beginning is now dashed, setting up his mentality for the rest of where this movie's gonna go.
Very true.
And it's necessary because now he has no hope for life at this point.
True, but I mean, there is the slight hope. We're gonna go outside and meet the fortune teller. Maybe he'll have something to turn this around.
Yeah, just a little bit, but in between then, we get the plans of the drug heist.
I do like this drug heist because it's terribly simple.
But that's what I like about it. So, basically, the setup is they're going to frame Monica for stealing the drugs because she's expendable.
And she's a druggie.
Setting up a short lifespan for most of the youth.
Yep.
which also kind of ties in a little bit to old must make way for the new. Because Kase, while he's young, he still feels like a little bit older than the two.
Yeah, I agree. But I think he's at that, like, stage where he still feels like he's the youth.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like, because he's looking at this older guy. He's much older. He's like, I'm not him, so I must be the next one in line.
Mm-hmm.
If only I could be next. And he's not really looking at the bigger picture here.
No, not at all. But I also like that it brings up that idea of the lesser dead.
Yeah.
That, no, we're using Monica because no one's gonna miss her. She's a nobody, and she's just on this one website.
Yeah, and I also like that they kind of, like, gently point out that they're like, well, not only will no one miss her and come looking for her, but she's, like, the perfect scapegoat, because if we pin this on her and she's dead, they won't do anything. They'll just be like, damn her, and then we'll keep going, and we'll have pulled off the perfect heist, essentially.
Yep.
And it's so simple, but I really appreciate that, especially because I've been on, like, a bit of a, like, crime drama, like, binge, and a lot of them, the crime is so overly complicated. It's the equivalent of Ocean's 11 at some points, where it's like, oh, we're just gonna steal from the boat, but we need all these people to steal from the boat. This one is like, what are we gonna do? Well, we're just gonna take the drugs and say that this person did it.
Yeah, no, and that's what's great is it is that simple.
And it, like, but that's so nice, because now we have room for everything else to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and also, like, bringing up Yasu, the guy who's supposed to have the drugs.
Yeah.
And Julie's warning to or using Julie as the warning system to Yasu. I do also like the little bit of slight commentary that it has of, like, it'll play out more as the movie progresses. But when they were originally talking, the cop and the Yakuza, he's like, oh, so you guys are supplying the drugs? He's like, our clan doesn't do that.
Yeah, a nice touch.
Yeah, it's a long gag that's going to pull off at the very end. It's that subtle humor that I like with it.
There's honestly quite a lot of long gags in this film, which really is nice.
Mm-hmm. And we do cut. That's the thing with this, like, first 40 minutes of the movie. There's a lot of back and forth because we get back to Leo, who's just now kind of lost, and you do feel for him. That's the great thing is, like, he gets this news, and instead of, like, lashing out, like we would see in the stereotypical, like, oh, I'm gonna lash out at the world because I've got nothing left.
True.
He's just kind of aimlessly wandering, kind of like aimlessly training.
True. And, like, I think a lot of it is because we start off with him already being depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yes, he now is truly at rock bottom, but just 5 minutes ago, before this, like, diagnosis, he already thought he was at rock bottom. He lost the fight. He's not getting the, like, deals and the recognition that he thought he was going to. Partially his fault, but, like, he's not going to admit that at the moment. Like, no girlfriend, no prospects. He's sad. He's all alone. Boo-hoo.
You just throw in a Jane Austen
a
reference.
little bit.
Yeah. Well, he has no family to impress anyway, so.
That's true. There's no dowry.
But I do like this fortune reading bit because he's like, you'll only be strong if fighting for others, and seems fake because he's like, oh, you're healthy. And it's like, I do think...
It's a little on the nose.
Yeah, and I do think it is a bit heavy-handed in this movie telling Leo what to do. But it's telling, not showing.
It is.
But to be fair, he is so lost that it also kind of works of, like, this is like the gods intervening of, like, dude, find some fucking purpose in your life, man.
Very true. And while this one is very in your face, I would argue that there's, if you really pay attention, 2 or 3 other bits of long play, like, things that are never, like, directly referenced again. Like, they do tie back around. They're definitely thought about. You get that last little gag if you were paying attention and you remember the, like, line from the very beginning of the movie.
Yes.
I would argue this is the only one that's, like, aggressive and in your face. And I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah.
Well, I do like it because it makes it feel like he is a fraud.
Yeah.
Because we've just, as far as we know, he's been told that he's got a massive brain tumor and he's going to die.
True. That's true.
But I don't think his acting's super great when he does lash out of, like, I was born alone, I will die alone, I don't care about others. It feels very immature, but at the same time, like, it is over the top and it works for someone who is immature and doesn't know what to do with their life.
Is this maybe the cleanest scene in the movie? No. But also I don't really care, because it kind of sets up everything else, and it's in line with the rest of the story. It's not that bad.
And so we cut to Otomo walking with Monica, who starts freaking out on the cop, and her and Leo paths cross as the best laid plans of Mice and Men goes awry, or starts to go awry.
Very true. And again, we see our creepy dude in the sheet.
Mm-hmm.
He's now a reoccurring character and has quickly become my favorite character in this movie.
Yeah, but I also do like it shows that Leo isn't heartless despite what he just said.
I especially love that we, without really any question, punch a man, realize it's a cop, and then panic.
Yeah. Well, also going back to that creepy guy.
Yes.
I do like this because everything that unravels their plans is unknowns.
This is true.
Because they're making all these plans around this prostitute that they don't know.
That's true. Yeah, they really don't know her yet.
They don't realize that she's got a lot going on in her head and that, like, her freaking out is not part of their plan.
That is very true. I think the reason that I already am stating that Sheet Man is my favorite character in this movie, despite him being actually not really a character and just someone who shows up 4 times, very briefly, because he goes from incredibly creepy, proper horror movie scary, and at this point he's now scary again, but it's a little less scary. Like you do take a second to go, is he actually here?
Yeah.
He still feels very real, very menacing. And every time we see him, he gets a little less menacing.
Mm-hmm.
And we will cover why, because right now we are still fully sheeted. We barely see face. He's very real looking. He really fits in with the crowd. Like, the lighting on him is exactly the same as everyone else. He doesn't feel green screened in. He doesn't feel like a thing in her head. You know he is because he doesn't make any sense, but he feels real and threatening. We will slowly start shifting away from him feeling real in, like, very detailed ways, and I love that little attention.
Yeah, it feels like she's becoming under the influence of something else.
This is true.
Yeah. But I do also, because this screw up with Otomo, Yasu comes home to the robbery, and it doesn't go right, and this is the comedy I like, where we spend 20 minutes planning everything.
Yeah.
And it's the little shit that throws it off, because Kase gets his arm caught on the doorknob as he goes to stun him. And it makes it feel that Kase is more of an amateur despite his bragging to the cop that disposal was his forte.
Yeah, I would like to see a resume and some references, please, because you don't feel professional. Yeah,
Yasu continues to feel like a dumbass through and through of, like, this guy who has high plans and goals, but doesn't have the skill to back it up. Opposite of Leo, who doesn't have the ambition, but has the skills to back it up.
Very true, very true.
Because Kase is a dumbass too. But
they all are, really.
Yasu's an even bigger dumbass, because he tasers Kase while Kase's pointing a gun at him.
Honestly, the amount of times in this movie where someone gets shot almost on accident, but, like, also on purpose, is shocking.
Well, and on top of that, like, Kase is being tailed. That just furthers his ineptitude.
Yeah, seriously.
He thinks he
feels like he's so sly, and yet he doesn't notice the little details. Yeah,
his shit don't stink. And that's the thing, is, like, he has these big plans. He's gonna be like, A plus B equals C, but he's not accounting for 20 other things that are happening around him.
And, like, some of it, one could argue, like, oh, no one can plan for everything. But some of it is stuff that he definitely should have thought of if he had done this before even once, probably.
Doesn't have his head on a swivel at all.
No, man is not looking.
No, but also, I do like that it pairs more comedy with Otomo coming to. And I love that he thinks that the drunken nurse would know who punched him. And she's like, no, I just kind of came out here.
I love her because she's sitting there giggling to herself, and he's like, did you do this? And she's like, no. I've only had, like, a couple of eyeballs and a beer.
Well, and she's also going on about her troubles
and how, like, little money she's made. Yeah,
like, she's 25 and she hasn't found a husband yet, and
her job sucks. Do you know that's why she drinks, is because her job sucks? And, like, for a nurse, she's literally just sat squat next to him, poking him in the cheek, like, hey, mister, you good?
Yeah.
Not performing any sort of real help.
No, not at all. Not a good nurse at that point.
I mean, it's her night off. She's not technically needs to work.
Yeah. But I do like that Otomo, this starts, like, his freak out of, like, well, this plan was supposed to go off without a hitch.
Yeah, I'm really glad, again, that the plan is so damn simple, because if it had been complicated, I think it would have been easier for people to be like, oh, well, that's a lot of working parts, it's not very realistic, or like, wow, nobody could possibly plan for all this. This man failed to, like, bother to look left and right when he got off the street. Mm-hmm. That's what didn't go right.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, and also things not going as planned. Mm-hmm. Julie being held at gunpoint beats the shit out of that guy, which is great.
Yeah, very happy about that, because it feels like a Miike movie. There's some other scenes that, like, from other movies that I'm like, okay, I can see how this is definitely Miike, but this is a much more, like, modernized version of those older scenes.
And I think there's a little bit of comedy in here that I'm not 100% sure on, because what I know of Japanese is not great.
Sure.
But they're using another foreigner to conduct this.
Okay.
And he says his Japanese is good when he's talking.
Because he texts his...
But when he's texting Yasu, he's doing it, like, very slowly and, like, trying to figure out the letters, kind of like you're reading alphabet for the first time.
When he said I text well, it was like the equivalent of something like, yeah, I took Spanish in high school. Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, do you remember how to get anywhere other than the biblioteca?
No.
De donde es?
Yeah. But there's something with Julie in this moment that I like too, where she uses sex as a weapon to lure the guy and kick his ass with feeling her and being like, look, I'm wet, dude.
Oh,
come on. Oh, you make me so randy.
Yeah.
But she has the ability to back it up. And also, she has that concern that she knows shit's up. She's been in the underground long enough that...
She's a smart cookie.
Exactly. But that's the thing with her is, one, she's pretty and sexy. But that's not all she is in this movie.
True.
She uses it, but she's got brains on her, too.
That's true.
That's
very true.
Whereas Monica doesn't have much going on upstairs.
No, she really doesn't. Granted, she is plagued by hallucinations, which might be, a good sign of brain dead trauma. Like, she's cooking herself. She's cooking her brain. But also, there's no grand plans.
Well, that's the other thing, too, with Monica is her life. You can tell that she has... It might be drug-induced, but she also might have schizophrenia. I mean, look at her life. Her dad beat her as a kid.
This is
true. She's been sold to sex trade.
She's having a hard time.
She's also drug... I guarantee you she wasn't a drug addict. They gave her something to, like, calm her down, and, like, it just developed a habit, because...
That would make sense. That would track with the movie, and also, like, the writing that we're used to for these sort of films. I don't know. It's one of those movies where we get just enough backstory to feel sorry for her and to kind of give a little bit of motivation, but it's not so much to explain truly anything about her.
Nope.
Because I think if we would, the end of the movie would have a lot more explaining to do.
Oh yeah, 100%. But this is also, like, when I say this movie goes back and forth a lot, it does it in a good way to keep the movie flowing, because we've had all this stuff happen. True. And we get a little rest with Leo and Monica, which now we get her bad past, which is a repeat of her story, but it's necessary to bring Leo up to snuff with a kind of puppy dog-eyeing him, like,
oh, don't you feel so sad for me?
Yeah, looking out for her because she's so frail. It's the start of giving him something to fight for, because he's already involved himself, unfortunately.
Very true.
And it also gives a reason, like, because we forgot to bring up that the only reason he's in is because she ran to him and calling him Ryuji.
Yeah.
But it also sets up him as the knight in shining armor.
Well, and also, even though it was very forceful, having that forceful scene with this fortune teller earlier, where it's like, so burned into your memory, because it happens and you're like, wow, that was really in your face. By having that in your face, you don't need to be told again why he is so interested in, like, okay, well, this is the thing I could die for. Yeah. This is something good. Yeah. I've only got a few minutes left, the doctor said, so might as well.
No, exactly. It gives him that, like, almost a suicidal mission to do. And the other thing with it, too, is this Ryuji character, getting him set up as that knight in a shining armor again, gives a goal for Leo to, at least an initial goal. It's like, in an RPG, your first mission to deliver this person to this person kind of thing.
It does feel a lot like that, yeah.
And I do think it's a good way to, like, bring in Leo, like, again, really start to give Leo that initial goal.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then we cut again to Kase showing up late with his plan unraveling as the cops panicking.
True.
Which I also love. There's a moment in this where his tail looks at him and it's that, like, big ass grin of, like, shit, gotcha.
The humor for the most part is very subtle, especially compared to some of Miike's others where it's a little bit more in your face. However, it hits the nail on the head of a balance between just really dark, like, grotesque humor and, like, a aw man, you got me sort of humor.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's also like the little things that add to this movie as a whole.
Definitely. Oh, definitely.
Because, like, Kase overreacts 100% when Julia's calling and is, like, revealing Yasu's death, and, like, it's like, oh shit, Yasu died, it had to be Monica, and, like, just the panic and revealing. Well, Julia's panicking is great. Here's where I think she's fantastic in this role.
I agree.
And just, like, the whole clan getting riled up and all over this shit, and it's giving a reason for us to be introduced back to the Chinese in, like, their rivalry between the Triad and the Yakuza.
Very true, very true.
But it also gives even more stakes because, and it's a little sub-story that doesn't really go anywhere. Well, it does go somewhere, but I like that it feels like a little nothingness to the rest of the story, where we get Boss Gondo.
Yeah.
And his rivalry with One Arm Wang.
Yes, which honestly feels a little out of nowhere. Because he just, like, out of nowhere calls for One Arm. And you're like, I feel like we should know who that is.
Yeah.
Because he says it like, go get the legendary One Arm Wang. And like, what? Did I miss something? Well, but, like, at the same time, you and all the rest of the goons are kind of in the same position. Because they're also looking around at each other like, do you have his phone number? Because I don't.
Well, it's not that. It's the tail.
Yeah.
We find out he's a rat for the Chinese because he calls and he's like, "Hey, is One Arm Wang out yet?"
Yeah.
Because it's very much so. Well, I don't know if it's it's. I now wonder if that dude's name is a play on a dick. One Arm Wang.
I can see it from an American audience, but you have to remember that everyone working on this is Japanese.
That hasn't stopped Miike in the past, though.
It really hasn't. But also Miike technically isn't the writer here, so, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Granted, Masa famously has similar writing taste as Miike, so, like, I don't know.
I mean, they've worked on, like, 6 or 7 movies together, so...
Yeah, so maybe. Is it said with enough playfulness for me to tell you yes? No. Is it said so much that you feel like maybe you're supposed to take a hint? Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
They repeat his name a lot.
For, like, how little he's actually in the movie.
He's in this for, like, a minute and a half.
Yeah. But it's also important because it puts Monica and Leo not just in the crosshairs of the shitty cop and it puts it in the hairs of the Yakuza now, because...
They're, like, really becoming the center of the hurricane.
Yeah, because they're blaming Monica for the drugs.
Yeah.
And now the Chinese have them, and now this is where we get introduced to Zizi, which we can't find anything on her.
No.
This is the most annoying thing about this movie is I can't look up. I like a lot of the cast, and I can't find anything else they've been in.
I was able to, like, hunt down a few social media posts, but honestly, is that the real actor or actress, or is that a fan page? I don't know.
Yeah, but we saw her earlier. She was the chick in the restaurant talking shit on the Yakuza to begin with.
She's back around, and in the way of Miike, one must cross their fingers to hope she doesn't die immediately.
True. Very true. But I also like how this movie puts women as, like, these badass chicks.
This is true. They use they're very resourceful in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of one who, she's meant to be the damsel in distress, so...
Yeah, but it gives a wide range to them, because, like, when they say, oh, get Jizi, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be this big, tough dude.
You do. You imagine, like, a big, burly guy.
Yeah, and it's just this really slender, pretty chick.
I will say that is something I find interesting in this movie as a whole. Even our boxer, who is supposedly supposed to be, like, the big, strong, tough dude. Nobody in this film who gets called on to be like, oh, call on so-and-so, or, oh, bring out the big guns. There really isn't any, like, Western idea big bulky dude. There's like
Yeah.
one tall guy, but he's dead kind of quickly. And then the rest are just pretty average looking dudes. Even our boxer guy would be considered an ultra lightweight in boxer community.
Yeah.
He's tiny.
I think
he's ripped, but he's tiny.
I think they call him a featherweight. So
he
like,
would be.
He's not.
He would 100% be.
Yeah, he's not big, but that's the thing I like about these about this movie in particular, is that the women are badass, but it's not like that level of like Marvel, where
They're
like
not,
the women are like overpowered for their size and frame.
It's not turning the women into like a buff dude to make them powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's having them just be a powerful woman, which I really like.
Exactly. But also, it's all these slow-moving parts that are interestingly coming together finally, or starting to at least.
You can definitely see how, like, even though the plot itself, like the plan that was laid out is like, oh, how we're gonna steal the drugs is terribly simple. The actual working, moving parts of this, once you like this scene, really, you can like start to see everything start to collide, and having that happen kind of slowly in front of you gives you time to be like, oh, this is going to be more complicated than we were told it was, which is good, because while that plan is good for you that it's simple, it's kind of boring for a movie.
Yeah, but it's because it's such a simple plan that I think it fails.
No, that's 100% why, and also, like, he's an idiot, but it also means that since we have essentially, like, 4 different spheres of people that are all trying to collide together and, like, come together because of this drugs that are being kind of stolen, very slowly, like, having those 4 circles worth of people that all are interacting with each other in their circles, but now their circles are starting to interact too. Yeah. It's a lot to keep track of.
Well, I also like that the drugs they steal isn't...
They never say what it is, really.
They never say what it is, but it's also not a lot from what we think of, because like usually when we think of like by an American standard, a drug heist, they're stealing duffel bags. This is a very small, like...
This is a Walmart bag of drugs.
Yeah. No, exactly.
No, granted, I will say, we do have to keep in mind, this is Japan.
Yes, I know, I'm aware their drug laws are much stricter.
Their drug laws are much stricter, and also, like, this is also a Miike film, and he's kind of, like, while he has done lots of movies with drugs and stuff, he's always either done an extreme amount, like, unbelievable, no one on earth owns that much cocaine. Like, there's not that much cocaine in the entire world, and that's, like, a lot of cocaine. We know because they just kind of store it places and we see it on the news eventually. Or it's like a ludicrously small amount of drugs. It's kind of Miike's calling card. He doesn't ever do like a standard amount of drug.
Not really. I mean, Miike really doesn't have that much drugs in his movies.
No, he really doesn't. And so this feels like an appropriate amount for a Miike film.
Yeah, it feels good for a small-time Yakuza game to have, like, okay, this is the amount of drugs we need.
And it pays off later, because we've already been told once, we don't deal with drugs, we're not that gang.
Yeah.
And so they're going through all of this crap for, like, if you really sit and stop and, like, think about it for 5 seconds, what would probably, by, like, gang standards, be a negligent amount of drugs. Like, hardly anything.
But that's the comedy in it all.
This is a Wednesday afternoon at some rich person's house level amount of drugs.
It's a P. Diddy party.
This is not even
P. Diddy light party.
This is P. Diddy tea afternoon amount of drugs.
Yeah, no, it's a fun little bit to it, but we do get a little bit of slowdown because like that's the thing with this movie is there's a lot of ramp up and then it slows down again.
The pacing of this movie is honestly really good. It gives you lots of speed. It gives you lots of action, but it gives you time. But it also gives you plenty of time to process and remember and think about who everyone was just now. Because honestly, we throw a lot at you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So when we talked about love and friendship,
yes,
we have time to digest these characters compared to Love and Friendship, where it's like, here's 2 seconds of this character. Yes. We're not going to see them for 20 fucking minutes or an hour into this movie.
And the characters in this movie, even the ones that you don't see very often, you don't see them because they are not meant to be seen often. Example being like the bosses, right? You're not supposed to see the mob bosses frequently. They're not doing their job correctly if you see them all the time.
Yeah, the old man who is like the head of this clan.
Barely in this movie.
We see twice.
Yes, which is how much I would want to see him.
Yeah.
Because that makes him feel more powerful. It makes him feel more important. It makes him feel more mysterious. If he was on screen all the time, he wouldn't be as cool.
Well, I also think it's a little comedy of old making way for the young of what they said earlier, because he's like, okay, do whatever you want because you're not going to listen to me anyways.
Yeah, essentially, like, yeah, have free reign. Just leave me to my retirement, not in jail.
Yeah. But when we do get back to Leo and Monica, it's that bit that Leo thinks his life is tragic, but Monica obviously has had it worse. And at this point, he's kind of like a big brother, because he's like, okay, well, this is the last good thing I could potentially do with my life.
He spends for the next 15 minutes, so many of the movie, so many times being sad, depressed emo boy with this is the last thing I'll ever do. I'll never live to see another Christmas sort of bullshit.
Yeah.
And eventually even the characters in the movie themselves are like, either shut up or tell me why. Like, stop. Jesus. And this is coming from someone who's so deep in the drugs they're hallucinating a man in his undie pants.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, is it the drugs, or is it that her father sexually assaulted her?
They don't say. I'd like to think the drugs, because that makes the end of this movie makes so much more sense.
She turned to the drugs because it makes her forget.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hard to say. Withdrawal's a terrible thing.
But, like, I also think it's interesting to even set her further as an outsider, because she takes an exotic English name. Or I don't know.
True.
I wonder if it's also like a marketing thing of like, you're not screwing Yuri, which that's what we learn her name is.
Yeah.
Well, you're screwing Monica.
Hard to say. I know that it is, especially in like the Yakuza gang sort of films, especially Japanese style, it is a hallmark, probably based off of real life, to have a quote-unquote stage name, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to have, like, the random Joe that you never want to see again be able to find you on Facebook, right? So, like, having picked a random-ass name, Monica's a pretty standard, like, sexy girlish name. I don't think it's that crazy for her to have picked it.
I guarantee she didn't pick it.
She probably didn't, but, like, maybe she did. Maybe they gave her, like, that list of your first day in Spanish class. They're like, pick a Spanish name.
Yeah.
Which, why? But...
Well, a different persona for you to think differently. Because, like, when she's on the job, she's Monica. When she's going through withdrawal, she's Yuri.
That's true, and I do think that this movie, like, if I am to be very nitpicky, and this is, again, very nitpicky, the switching between her names is not well done. Having, like, more people actively call her by her name based off of whether they think she's working or how they know her, I think would have helped make that distinction a little bit stronger, and maybe even given time for us to, like, process the fact that her name isn't the same twice, because, like, it's so infrequently, like, talked about or spoken that, like, you kind of just, like, accept that her name is both and don't think about it. But again, that is a terribly nitpicky thing to say. Like, this movie's fine. There's no reason to add that.
Yeah, it does make me think a little bit in, like, Sukiyaki Western Django, with the head of the Red Clan. He's like, you'll now call me Henry because of the War of the Roses.
You know what, Henry? Sounds good.
Yeah.
But also, like, granted, that seems a little silly, but at the same time, it gets the entire point across in one line. Granted, a silly line, but, like, you see the character's thought process. He names himself. You now understand that he's got this persona in his head. It'd be kind of nice if, like, very briefly, or, like, with the other cast and crew, like, having them use her name in different scenarios would have helped a little bit, because honestly, for 90% of this movie, she's just Yuri.
Or, I mean, to Leo, to everyone else, she's Monica, because that's all they know her as. But that also the two different names are interesting in that way, because now Leo is talking to her as a person, as Yuri, and seeing her as a person, whereas everyone else is seeing her as the tool Monica. Julia sees her as a tool for making money. The gang see her as a tool because, she's got her as a goal because she has the drugs. Same with the Yakuza. They all see her as Monica, the object, whereas Yuri is the person she is.
And now you can see them slowly fall in love.
Not even really yet.
This is, I think, the start of it if you're going to be, like, really looking into it.
Yeah, it starts off a very big brothery of taking her to Ryuji, because that's the only safe person that, as far as he knows, she has any relation to.
Exactly.
But going back to that name back and forth, I do think it's interesting because it's and maybe we're reading too much into it, and maybe that's the good thing about this movie.
Maybe.
Is Yuri the person, Monica the object?
Very interesting. I would be interested also, and it might have been an interesting, like, extra layer to have Leo have a fight name, as opposed to just Leo.
Yeah.
Granted, that's not a big boxer thing. Most boxers just fight under their government name and call it a day. But some do pick a stage name. It's more of a wrestling thing. Boxers usually just full government official names. Some even throw their middle name in there, and they're like, yeah, that's me. And you're like, maybe pick a different one. But, like, it would have been an interesting, like, dynamic. Because, especially for the first half of this movie, their lives are very parallel. And then the last 5-10 minutes of the movie, again, a huge parallel between the two of them.
Yeah. Might
have been an interesting, like, little switcheroo to be like, and he has a stage name, too. He's, I don't know, the Masked Bandit or something. I don't know. That might be too luchador, but, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. But I do think, after we have that bit, Kase taking Julia home is... it's back to a little bit more comedy after a serious scene, because he keeps pressing into more and more corners as his plan starts to fall apart.
They're really crumbling here.
Yeah, because even like, so he's talking to Julia and he's like trying to like coerce her out of something, and she's just like not giving in. Of like, he does coerce her to get like, she tells him, I put a tracking device on Monica. We can go find that little bitch.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I'm fucking done with this. And he just smashes her face into the car by slamming on the brakes.
And, like, the first time he does it, you're like, oh, that was clever and mean. And then he does it again, you're like, okay, you got her. And then he does it 3 or 4 more times, you're like, okay, I think you got it.
Because he doesn't get it. Because, like, she comes back and she's like, what the fuck was that for, man?
Yeah, okay. That was the thing that I'm glad the movie kind of, like, loosely addressed. Because the first time he does it, I was about to stop the movie and text you and be like, this is the stupidest and most unrealistic way to knock a man out. Because, like, we've already proven that she's a tough cookie, right? She's not some dainty flower who, like, out by the first breath of a falling wind, unlike some other people. So, like, she's a tough cookie. And then the movie immediately addresses that, and she's like, what the hell is wrong with you? So he just has to keep slamming his brakes, and no one around him driving seems to, like, bother. They're like, well, what a weirdo.
Yeah.
And keep going.
Well, it feels like he's driving on, like, side road, basically.
There's a whole section of interstate traffic on the other side of the median.
Yeah.
There's like 40 cars
the one
going the other direction.
The one part of the movie that they had the budget for. Because, well, I'll get into the cars later.
This is true. No, this part 100%, like, if you really stop and think about it, 100% feels like they had maybe 30 minutes of this part of the road being closed, but only in this direction. And it was like, okay, well, if traffic is going this way during this time, we'll close this part of the road during this part because no one will be driving there. So there's just, like, heavy daytime traffic going one way, and he's just eek, down the other side.
Yeah, and even his plan to kill Julie falls apart because she has an old lady roommate.
This part absolutely gave me the cackles, because this is the sort of thing that, like, an experienced actual professional would have, like, looked into, right? The basics of, like, okay, I'm going to take her back to her place, kill her, and it's going to look like the gang got her. Right? And you don't look at the place before you go? You don't do a quick... Because you know this old lady doesn't leave the house.
Yeah.
He didn't do a quick, like, walk by as the pizza delivery to, like, knock on the door at 3 PM to see if anyone is home? No!
Well, because killing Julie was never part of his plan. And even then, like, he sets up this whole ridiculous, like, Rube Goldberg light.
So stupid.
Of a dog with matches to, like, gasoline. And it's just, like...
It's so... Okay, the dog was almost clever. And then you realize that he actually got really lucky that this even worked in the first place. Because this isn't one of those, like, good robots. This is like one of those shit ones that the street hawkers try and sell you on the streets of New York, where they're like, do you want the dog? And there's like 20 of them attached to the light pole, and they're all beep beep beep, tweet 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 tweet, beep beep beep. And you're like, God, I'm gonna kill all of them. I'll buy all of them to shut them up.
And it only turns, like, to the left.
They never go straight. All of them have, like, a slight drift. And so the fact that this worked at all is a miracle.
Yeah. And also, like, her escape is so
I
cheesy
love
of just,
it.
like, waking up, hot, hot, hot,
And then just busts out the window. Okay, there's a few scenes in this movie that are Miike level over the top. And I think if it was any other director, I would make the stance that it was out of the rest of the movie's styling and maybe unnecessary. Cool, don't get me wrong. Love it. But not within theme. And this is the first one. We'll get to the second one much later, and if you've seen this movie, you already know which one I'm about to bitch about.
Yeah.
But this movie has been action-packed, don't get me wrong. But it's been action-packed in, like, the let's run away, or, like, ooh, some gunfire. And, like, honestly, by American standards, not that much gunfire. Because, again, guns are illegal in Japan. So, like, there's, like, one gun that they're all passing around.
Yeah.
And she just, like, full on James Bond style leaps out of her first floor window as it explodes. I'm assuming her roommate's dead, but we honestly don't know. Maybe she, like, left. We really have no clue.
Oh, no. Kase knocked her out.
Yeah, knocked her out. Not dead. Because, like, when he...
Now she's dead.
Well, we assume, but here's the thing. Here's why I say maybe not dead. Because he knocks her out, sets all this up, but the scene right before that is he knocks her out and she lays there and, like, looks over at the camera and blinks. Like, she's not actually knocked out. She's just laying there waiting for him to leave so she can get up and be like, I'm fucking done with this, and leaves. That's how I interpret it. But maybe she's dead. We don't know. No. Also, maybe this explosion isn't that powerful and she's just in the other room fine.
It's enough to, like, blow out a window.
But also this tiny 90-pound soaking wet woman could bust through the window with her body weight. So, like, this window's made from, like, what, the 1910s? The late 1800s?
They're lower class. It could be an old shitty building.
This glass is made out of hopes and fucking dreams. Maybe some silicone. Because, like, this tiny woman, who, don't get me wrong, is a badass, but she uses her brains to be a badass. She's not, like, a fighter. She's not, like, a big, heavy lady. She weighs half what I do, I bet. And she just, like, gently leaps out the window, and she busts the window first. I checked.
Yeah, I know.
So, like, this glass is made out of nothing.
Yeah. She probably could have survived the explosion.
Honestly, probably. Because, like, from what we can tell, it was, like, some hairspray that went up.
Yeah. But we get that little nice bit of action to Leo calming down Monica, which a bit of comedy to the vision of the... I mean, it's still creepy, but it's just, like... It's a little funny of, like, him dancing to, like, the
And this
music.
is why he's my favorite character. Because he goes from really, truly scary. Like, when you first see him, like, morph out of the floor, terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, won a whole horror movie about that, right? Then it's a little less scary, but he's still scary. Then the next time we see him, he's a little less scary even, because now he's just in his undies.
Yeah.
And, like, he's
always just been in his undies.
I know, but it's more sheet, usually.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of sheet. Like, you can, like, the face part slowly gets revealed each time he shows up. So it's, like, more and more face each time you zoom in on the face more. The third time we see him, you, like, notice now he's in his undies, and you're like, oh, those are some granny panties you got there, my man.
I noticed from the get-go.
It's usually more sheet, so you're a little less focused on him when you're watching it the first time.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of granny panties. But, like, he's scary. Now, wow, look at them tidy whities.
Yep.
And then he starts dancing. And at this point, he's my favorite character, hands down. I am here for an entire movie based off of this hallucination.
Okay, but all power to you for that.
Like, Freddy Krueger with this combined would be hilarious.
Just a middle-aged Japanese man in his whitey tighties.
Haunting people, yeah.
Actually,
that some people can see.
That would actually make a great ghost comedy.
It'd be a great ghost comedy. And, like, occasionally, like, they'd be like, what do you see him doing? They'd be like, he's flossing. And not, like, his teeth. Like, he's doing the floss.
Oh, fuck that. Goddamn, no.
Like,
no.
I feel like this has potential to be the new version of Scream. 1 through 6.
I don't. You know, if you write it, I'll watch it.
I refuse.
But it is also a bit to show them getting a little bit closer with holding their hands.
Yeah, they're starting to, like, be more than just like, oh, you're the lost kitty I need to take hold of. It's more of like a, we both have trauma. What if we bond together?
Yeah.
What if we both trauma together? Which, honestly, nothing brings people together more than trauma.
Not even like Leo. Leo doesn't have that much trauma.
Leo thinks he does, though. That's
Yeah.
why we're here.
Yeah. But I do also like that Yasu's plot unravels even further as the Chinese rat confronts him.
Boy, his plan went from being hella simple to, like, really dissolved. Fully and totally dissolved.
Yeah, really trying to worm his way out, but obviously he's going to win over this time.
Yeah, you know, you can only be stupid for so long.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, like, as long as you have something to fight for.
That is the whole point of this movie.
Yeah, but I do like the little comedy of him trying to get everything right for killing Joshima. That's his name, by the way.
Oh, yes.
But I also think this kind of made me realize, like, where the realm of, like, slapstick physical comedy is, where I like it, is when it's, like, the little subtle small gestures of him moving him, like, a fraction of an inch to get him underneath the tire, or his head under the tire.
It feels a little bit like the type of slapstick humor where, like, maybe it could have been edited out and, like, we retook the shot. Like, we could have just redone the shot and him get it perfect. But instead, we just left it. And, like, I think it's hilarious, because it feels more real.
I need you to watch another Miike adaptation that he's done. Of
course you do.
There's a part in the Ace Attorney live action. And
Of course it's Ace Attorney.
This hits 100%. There's a part where there's a parrot. And the parrot starts climbing the Ace's arm and, like, starts getting up into his head. And then the movie cuts because, like, you can obviously tell that wasn't part of it. And they didn't have time to reshoot it. So, like, the actor's just kind of, like, trying to get his head away from the bird.
Parrots are so scary. They have such sharp can openers on their faces.
I think it's a parakeet, but not a parakeet. Cockatoo. It's a cockatoo.
Those are terrifying. Those open cans with their face.
Yeah.
The only thing I will allow to push that close to my head is a pigeon because they have tiny little baby beaks.
Yeah. But you should watch it for that part alone.
I will. Ace has been one of those, like, series in general that I'm like, I'd probably like it. But that feels like a lot of stuff to get through. So I haven't started it.
But that's the thing with this one. I don't feel it feels like that. It feels very intentional.
It feels intentional. Like, it was definitely written this way. But it's written with that sort of mindset where, like, how would a real person do it? Probably not right the first time. You gotta, like, adjust a little.
Yeah. Well, and there's also the extra comedy on top of it where Kase thinks he's still gonna get away with it, but Julia is still alive because he's
terrible at his job.
Again, an unknown that he expected to be solved by that little issue.
Also, I 100% think that explosive that he set off, like, hey, we've already talked about how it probably wouldn't have killed her even if she hadn't jumped out the window. I bet you anything that he got that idea from, like, a TV show or a movie. It does not feel like something he's done before. Because otherwise he would know it probably wouldn't work normally. He just got hella lucky.
No, exactly. But, like, her showing up to the other Yakuza and be like, yeah.
And I love that his face is like, oh my god, she's not dead?
Oh, he doesn't even know this at this point because he's driving off with the drugs.
This is true. Also, in true Miike fashion, all of the gore, though granted not much of it is on screen, it all makes the classic Miike hand and pasta noodles squish noise. With the mic really close. So, like, he drives over it, and, like, if you've run over roadkill, you're aware that, like, you might notice a bump, but you don't hear an audible squish noise. Not in Miike world. In Miike world, you just get real in that mac and cheese with both hands and mush it around.
I try avoiding running over roadkill.
I do too, but I've lived far enough out for long enough that sometimes your options are limited.
Okay.
And I can tell you that even with the windows down, the noise that Miike puts in his films is not present in the real world. Granted, I've not run over a man's skull at slow speeds.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say, I mean, you're hitting that roadkill at like 70 miles an hour.
True. I mean, 55 usually, but like, because I don't break that many rules. But granted, I have not run over a man's skull, so like, I don't know if someone else has and would like to chime in and let me know. I do think though that's just a hallmark of Miike. This is something I've noticed in Miike films in general, is that if there's gore, especially if it's not on screen, it's extra squishy, noisy, just to really get the point across.
Well, I think it goes back to like Yojimbo and old samurai flicks where you have to overemphasize, otherwise it doesn't feel real. Like with the sword pulling out of its blade and that shing.
Yes,
that's not real, but it makes it feel dynamic.
No, and I I don't hate it. I honestly find it a bit of a hallmark to Miike films in general, how squishy they sound.
Mm-hmm.
There is an overemphasis in all of the gore scenes in Miike films in general.
Yeah.
Of just someone with their microphone right up in a bowl of spaghetti, stirring away.
After all that, I still do like that when we cut back to Leo, he's really trying to heal Monica and have her face reality. I mean...
He's doing his best, but boy, your best is never going to be enough for someone like that.
Well, his best was to bring her to where the last place that, as far as we know, she's only lived in 2 places.
That's true.
Her parents' place where she met Ryuji, and also that apartment building. So that's as far as we know, that's all she's ever known. So we're going back to the last place she can remember.
True.
But all the walls are starting to close in because it's really... The thing with this, too, is it's really giving time for Monica to build and introduce her as well. I
think it's really important because otherwise she would be a nothing damsel in distress. Mm-hmm. She wouldn't feel like a real character who's actually fighting her own problems.
It gives heart to the story.
100%, because otherwise you would just be like, wow, what an unrealistic, over-the-top character, even though plenty of people struggle all the time with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, granted, maybe not Yakuza trying to blow people's apartments and stuff, but, like, you know what I mean. And by giving time for her to really build herself up, not only does it make her a more interesting and realistic and rounded character, it gives us a reason to think that her and him should get together and fall in love. Like, her and Leo should potentially get together, because the two of them could be good for each other.
Yeah, sometimes trauma does help you grow.
No one is your best friend quite like that coworker who's also trauma bonded with you.
Every coworker. But the Yakuza do find them in this scene, and it shows that Leo is solidly on his feet and, like, fast.
Yep, and he's not lost that much boxing in the, 24 hours we've been doing this?
Mm-hmm. And just the threads of them coming together through a just coincidence, and also him killing another Yakuza of shooting, he's like, oh shit, this is real. He's like, I'm in deeper than I thought.
Yeah, but at the same time, this kind of gives us leeway to later on, when we start to question what Leo's future is going to look like. This is a good little tidbit to add in here, because now we've opened the door of, like, well, Leo has now killed a man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a wanted dude.
It's a suicide mission. To be fair, it's self-defense.
It is, and at this moment, it's still a suicide mission. But at the same time, boy, you really pushing it, man. Mm-hmm. This is most people just want to go to Disney.
Make-a-wish joke, I get it.
Most people don't want to kill a Yakuza guy. Like, that's not high on the list, I think.
Leo didn't either.
No, but he's already here.
Yeah, but I also think, like, his kind of, like, blasé when he should be freaking out.
This is true.
Is also great to compare against Otomo, the cop, who's like, I'm out of this, man. Dude, this is too deep. You said this would be an easy job. I only took it because it would be easy.
Otoma is a character that I really like because he's again, hardly in this, but every time he's in over his head.
Oh, yeah. But it's all coming to a head quickly because they get stopped by the rest of the gang.
True.
Yasu, or not. Kase.
The rest of the gang is finally converged. Everyone's in the same room finally. Essentially.
Kind of. I mean, Julie coming out of the car is pretty badass too.
That's true.
I mean, she is creepy when she's on the car, and I also appreciate...
She's so unhinged, and I love it.
She breaks the window and hits Kase, and then the cop reverses. The cop waited for that dude to get hit.
That's true. You know, a good teamwork, really.
But there's another trope in this movie that I just think is so dumb but great. Mm. Because while they're reversing, they get trapped between a rock and the Chinese gang now too.
True.
Where they don't, even though he's looking back, they don't see the Chinese until, like, they're right there.
Which, not sure how this happened unless they, like, just, like, popped up out of somewhere, but, like, good effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also we get the little bit of Miike sexual comedy of...
This is the most Miike-esque scene in the movie.
Yeah, because they spill some of the drugs, and Kase is, like, freaking out because it's, like, getting into his blood, and he's, like, feeling really good. Then Monica's snorting it off of his dick, or not off of his crotch.
Yes. This is, and granted, for a Miike film, especially ones that we've even covered. This is tame compared to other Miike films. This is a lot compared to other directors. So, you know, this is where, like, the Miike warning would happen if you needed that.
So on a scale of this to Gozu, because I told you.
You did.
This one I felt our friend group could watch.
They probably could, with the exception of a few.
Yeah, that just like this scene in Julia touching herself would maybe be a little uncomfortable. But...
Yeah, luckily the Julia scene is over quick.
Mm-hmm.
You could very easily be like, hey, what's that? What's the cat doing? And they'd miss it. This one's a little bit longer because not only does this bit that we've described happen, but then he kind of like continues on with his self-adventure, self-pleasuring.
It's a little too long.
It's a little extra long, and if you didn't know Miike's humor style and also, like, exploits into this sort of, like, adventure, if you will, one would be like, what an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Knowing this is Miike, you go, wow, he really toned it down. I didn't see a single penis.
I didn't see a woman give birth to a full-grown man.
Man, this is amazing. I haven't seen a single tit. So, like, on a Miike scale, this is very light. This is like a really good, maybe, introduction to see if someone's ready for more Miike.
More extreme Miike.
More extreme Miike. Because granted, we've talked about how Miike is a very versatile actor. Just because it has his name as the director does not mean you're going to get crazy pants.
Yeah.
It's like, he's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of different styles of stuff. He's a very explorational sort of dude. However, if you're looking for Miike-styled things, I think this is a good, like, tester movie to be like, how did that make you feel? Did you want to, like, explore that more? How much is too much?
I've got another movie where a cowboy gets his dick sucked while getting information.
See? This is why I think this is a good start spot. Because also, like, granted, is it uncomfortable? Yes. Because it goes on extra long. Mm-hmm. Not too long, because we've seen other movies where, like, it's like, wow, this movie was really short and you really spent a lot of time on that.
You spent 3 minutes in Sukiyaki Western Django, this dude getting his dick sucked while getting information.
Exactly. So, like, but with that said, there is nothing visually explicit that happens. No. Unlike most other Miike films.
Well, even Sukiyaki Western Django's toned down.
Yes, it is. I'll give you that. Like, granted, I will not say that all Miike films are the same. He, like I said, very versatile guy. Done a lot of stuff. There is truly a Miike for everyone. All Miike is not for everyone.
No.
And this is, if you are like, wow, you guys have spent so much of your lives now dedicated to this director, maybe I too would be interested in it. This is a good testing ground, because if this is your nope, if this is where you tap out, you need to eliminate a lot of Miike films.
Yeah, I did show your husband Yakuza Apocalypse last week.
I heard. Don't worry. I heard. And I warned them on the way down. I was like, by the way, he's already picked out what you guys are watching. They're like, no, let's start scrolling and find something else. And I was like, no, I think I already know what you guys are watching. The ladies are going to go watch Sonic 3. Bye. Yeah,
well, he got really worried because the warning and the rating said rape.
Yes.
And it's like 3 seconds.
Yes. And like I said, there is a variation and an intensity of Miike at lots of levels. He has explored a lot. He has done a lot to, like, see what boundaries he can push and how far for what audience. This is a very good, like, wow, you can make it through this. And if you have a friend who's already seen this and you know that this is not going to be for you, it is literally 2-second skips. Like, 2 quick skips and you are through this and you've not missed a damn thing. However, I do think, though, that if this doesn't bother you and you like the rest of this movie, there is more. You just need to brace for more nudity and more fluid.
Yeah.
But, with that said, this is by far the most intense part of this movie, and for a film that very easily could have really laid it on thick with his past works, I think this shows a lot of maturity from Miike as far as a director style.
Intense sexually.
Yes.
Because there's a lot more to it. Because
yes.
I do think that this scene is probably one of the more important scenes in the movie, too, because it's really showing that we kind of forget that Yuri is also a victim as much as Leo's caught up in this. Where she's like, all this is happening, and she says, I don't want this anymore about the drugs.
Yes, yeah.
And Leo says, why is all this happening when I'm about to die? Showing that, hey, there was a little bit of hope that he's like, I don't want to be involved in any of this at all. But
True.
I think that there's a very telling part in this scene. And this is where Konishi has some really great subtlety in her acting.
Yeah.
Where when he says that line, she looks up at him in this way of like, oh shit, he has problems too. And it's a nice, simple way of showing her realizing that maybe she hasn't been paying attention to him either, of like...
It feels like two people who were maybe a little self-centered on their sadness and problems finally coming together and be like, oh, we can be together in this. Yeah,
and Leo a little bit more emotionally mature than Monica, like... He's like, okay, I'm about to die. I'm going to die anyway, so I might as well help this chick.
And I feel like for him, it feels like a final resolution, right? Like, this for him feels like the final acceptance of like, wow, shit's really going crazy. Yeah. And I'm just about to die, and I was just asking for more excitement in my life. And I get it, and it's the worst possible timing. And then, but for her, I also think this is a huge growth, because she has, not by even her own choice, had to live such a shit life for so long that she has not had the time or effort to look at other people. And she finally has found someone that she's kind of interested in, and to hear that that might be taken away, I think is the jump start she needed to be like, oh, I need to be the one in charge of this now.
Yeah, my substitute Ryuji might go away.
Yeah, and I think when she asks, because I think she says, I don't want to be part of this anymore, help me. And then you can see it, like, visually on her face, how, like, after he says, I'm about to die, you can see it on her acting. It's really great how, like, you can see her tone and face shift to be like, oh, I need to help me. I can't just keep waiting for someone to come and save me.
It's not even I need to help me, is like, maybe I need to help someone else too. It goes back to you need to have someone to fight for.
And that is the whole point of this, because I think this movie ends up wrapping up really nicely, and we'll get to it in a second.
Yes. Because the movie does really ramp up here, because now the cops are involved, and we have a great chase.
Huge chase scene.
Then there's this fight in the... so here's the thing. It's an empty garage. Yeah. And this is where you can really start to see the budget of this movie. Like, it's like, we spent a lot of time on this. Now we gotta cut it back a little bit. But it's a fun drifting scene. There's no cars around them. Not Tokyo drifting a dude into death is great.
It's very cool.
But it's just a scene of pure chaos that's great.
True.
And it's the most action we've had this entire movie.
It has ramped up very smoothly and nicely.
But it gives Leo and Monica a chance to escape to the hardware store, as well as gives us a pause to bring One-Armed Wang and give him an entrance.
Who, honestly, we had completely forgotten about.
Yep. All our pieces finally coming together. And Monica trying to understand Leo a little bit while they're taking refuge. And this is this is the part where Kubota, the guy who plays Leo, has some of the best acting in this movie.
Yeah.
He finally gets to check his phone, and it's all been a mix-up, as the doctor got him involved with this, basically, because he was wandering aimlessly, and it really did turn out it was just a lucky punch. He doesn't have brain cancer. And it's that little bit of comedic long game of like, I wasn't supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And it's too late because he's now too deep. The fortune teller was right. But it's also a great part because there's that frantic increase in the doctor with each voicemail saying, hey, give us a call. Please don't sue us. But it also is a way to, like, without musically, building the tension in the store fight as all the others are combing not a very large store.
Yeah, this is honestly a tiny store.
What's supposed to feel like a labyrinth.
The other thing that I really like here is the doctor, like, ramps it up with each phone call to, like, desperation. And, like, yes, it does start off with, like, please don't sue us. But he leaves a little, like, hint in there that you're like, wow, we've really been playing the long game this whole time. And he goes, please don't do anything rash. I know a lot of people, when told they're gonna die, are, like, going off for full adventure. I really hope you're okay. And you're like, boy, you couldn't have picked a worse time.
Yeah, but it's also with Monica or Yuri trying to, like, pay attention of, like, hey, what's going on with this guy that I'm kind of interested in.
Yep.
But there's that change in Leo's demeanor where he's gone from this calm, cool, kick-ass guy, and granted, probably the last scene didn't help too, but now he's not on death's doors either, and there's this shakiness to him of he's like, oh, fuck, like, my life isn't forfeit, but it's it's too late because he's got all this shit going on around him, and on top of that, he gets cornered by Gigi, and she recognizes him as Century Egg, which I do like that there's that little bit of camaraderie.
Where they, like, finally come back around.
Well, and also her calling him the nickname of, like, Century Egg, of what she knows him as, because they're outsiders.
True. Very true.
But I also appreciate that he's given a way out. But it also builds him as a character, because she gives him a way out because she knows he's not part of this. But he also has to stand up for Yuri because he's like, no, I'm not. He knows what's going to happen if she gets taken away.
True.
And it's daunting and precious. And now he has something to fight for. It's that final moment of like, he has his purpose now.
Very true.
And meanwhile, all the others are walking the maze, and then shit starts hitting the fan. I love the guns versus swords is kind of funny.
Yes, yeah.
And there's like the little bit of heart to it too, where Gigi tells him that the greatest virtue in life is humanity. After he's like, she's not even part of this. Like, we're innocent. And it's like giving that little hope of like, okay, I'll take your word for it. He's like, she doesn't have drugs. Like, you can obviously see that we're just kind of civilians in all your guys' shit.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate it because while this could have been like a super over-the-top action-packed scene, there's enough action, but it's all kind of humorous. Like, Kase getting his arm cut off and trying to get the gun out of it while Julia kills him. And then she's immediately killed because, as far as they know, she's Monica. She's the only female that they know involved. Yeah, and it's just after her getting her revenge. And to be fair, her death is very just because it's also a little poetic because she's a horrible person. We kind of forget that she's been the one who... She's
not a good person.
No,
she's just badass.
She's whoring out Monica. She's beating her. Yeah. She's keeping her drugged.
Yeah.
And then
she's terrible.
And then she gets killed for being mistaken as Monica.
Which is poetic justice.
Yeah. And then also the the cop getting caught between Gondo and One-Armed Wings fight, which I like that bit because it makes me think a little bit of Rush Hour.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Where they have their guns and then it's the blonde dude saying, "Fight me like a man."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but it doesn't go that route, but it's a cool, like, old school almost knife fight.
And honestly, all of this is very quick paced, which is nice because it doesn't give you time to really reminisce on any like single scene. Everything's so quick and hitting so quickly that it really honestly adds to the humor because you're like bouncing between all these characters quick enough for none of it to be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that person's dead. It's like, oh, ha, justice dead.
Well, and when Leo and Yuri get cornered again by the I think it's the Chinese triad who find them. It's a good time for Monica's hallucination to stand up for herself, and she's not standing up against the triad. She's standing up against the last time we see the naked old man.
Yeah, the scary guy in his whitey tighties.
But Leo's confidence is back.
Yep,
and it's all just it's a great coming to terms moment. And also, I do like that the cop and the Chinese chick are taken out by the police in a very American-style shootout.
It's amazing. It is over the top.
Hundreds of rounds into the store, all because, like...
My goodness.
Otomo pulls out, like, his badge, but it's because the chick behind him has a gun, and they're like, gun! Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
But Gondo takes that wing brutally. It's awesome.
This is true. It is over the top.
And then we get a little bit of comedy on top of it, where Leo and Monica meet Gondo, who is just as confused to who Leo is and why they're even there. He's like, I don't care. He's like, we're not even supposed to be part of this.
Yeah, but actually.
And this is where we get a jazz rock to escape in a cartoon because
the budget's gone.
Yeah, I assume a real escape like that would have been too expensive for them and a little too over the top.
It's also the most over the top because there's a lot of ways we could have like busted through this police barricade to like keep the chase going, but having the car jump from the first story, like really just wild. The animation style is really cool looking, don't get me wrong. I love it. I love the jazz sequence here. Like, the music really ramps it up. The music in general in this movie is very good. This animation sequence is, like, maybe 30 seconds.
Yes.
It's tiny. I thought for a hot second that, like, maybe we were gonna do, like, the rest of the film this way for a second. I was like, okay, I don't get it, but, like, cool.
It's Miike.
Yeah. So if you can't tell, this is the scene that I'm gonna bitch about just a little bit, because, like, this is cool. This doesn't make any sense for the style of the rest of the movie.
Monica tripping.
That could have been it if the rest of Monica tripping had been this. But no, Yuri's, like, visions have been horror and they've been realistic.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, like, I think this being her trip could have been really cool and fun. I don't think it would have been as horrific. It wouldn't have felt as real. It wouldn't have made the very last scene feel as important. So I'm for this not being her tripping. Because this feels like a comedic, like, it would have been cheap, right? Like, this would have been the cheap way to do the drugs. Also, this isn't from any one character's point of view.
No.
This is just, like, in general. This is, like, a third party, like, camera floating outside. Nobody's point of view. We honestly don't even know who's driving the car, really.
Yeah.
Like, is this just happening? Is it cool? 100%. Does this have any place in the rest of this movie?
No.
No.
Yeah. Well, I know it's 100% a budget thing, and we'll get into it because there's a lot of budget things about to happen.
I don't be wrong. I know Miike has worked on a low budget many, many times before. This one felt like the rug got pulled maybe a little late. Because, like, I do think that with some, like, reworking to the writing, this could have been avoided. We could have totally had, like, a cool chase. We could have had a cool escape without this. And it felt like, well, shit, we've already, like, done everything else. We'll just draw that scene real quick.
Yeah. But it's the scene right after that escape is a pretty big scene, too, because Gondo knows who Leo is from fighting and tries recruiting him. It's kind of a little bit of comedy because he's like, if you join, you'll be number 3 because all the others are dead.
He doesn't even say all the others. He's just, like, trying to, like, be sly where he's like, I'll instantly make you number 3 if you join right now. And you're like, yeah, let me count the number of people in your gang right now. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Yeah,
the old man we saw a long time ago. Me, and now you if you want to join.
Yeah.
And then also the big payoff of he's like, get rid of the drugs. Their clan wasn't even supposed to be involved in drugs anyways.
And, okay, this last little scene where they're not even dumping, sprinkling the drugs out the windows.
Oh, they're dropping the entire bag.
Like... They are, but first they are sprinkling, and then they are dropping them. I find this hilarious because I was watching them do that, and I was like, well, they know it's your car, so it's not like you're really getting rid of evidence. And you're dropping the bag out the window, too. So they could pick up the bag and be like, clearly there were drugs in this bag. The way that this movie decides to handle that question, that, like, obvious, like, oh man, they're gonna get you, is to have the drugs make a cloud behind the car.
With the cops crashing off screen, too.
Yes.
Because of budget reasons.
You can hear the crash happening, and yet... every cop apparently in Tokyo is behind them because there's like 100-something cars.
That's just in a second because like I want to go back to that scene of dumping the drugs because it's one of the biggest scenes for Monica because before she kept looking at the drugs even though she was standing up for herself. This is her last little bit of dumping the drugs because she doesn't need them anymore. This
definitely does feel like her deciding to fight for herself because it feels very much like she has tried to fight for her father who needs the medical treatment and like not the whole movie. Give me a second. Don't give me that look.
All right.
It feels like she started her story with this sad backstory of like I tried to fight for my dad's medical treatment and I ended up in this situation, right? Like I had to take on his debt.
What her dad was a druggie.
Yeah, and needed medical treatment.
Oh, I guess I didn't.
Okay.
Catch that bit.
Okay, well he did. So he has medical debt and that's why she's here. It's not just for his drugs.
He owed money to the Yakuza.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's medical debt. He just abandoned her because he was a druggie too.
I'm just
telling. I don't know.
I'm just telling you. Okay. I'm just telling you. So it feels like she's tried to take on her dad's debt. It didn't work out. This was a terrible life choice. Drifting through life, realize, oh, here's a guy I could, like, maybe fight for. That goes poorly. Now he's her hallucinations. Decide, nope, we're not doing that anymore. Find a new guy. Oh, he's also sad. He doesn't have anyone. We realized together that we could fight for each other. And then at the end, she circles back around to, oh, I could also do this for me.
Yeah.
And this feels like that scene.
Yeah, she has something to fight for. She fight for herself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they do go their separate ways. Gondo, I like the line that the morning light doesn't suit the wicked as he dies, and the car just continues in a straight line.
Just keeps going forever.
But it's also perfect because now all who know that Leo and Monica are involved are dead.
True.
We get their washing away of the cold water in the morning.
True. This doesn't really, if you think about it too hard, solve their problem. Because, 100 police cars watched them, 2 people, at least, dump drugs out the window, pull over somewhere, granted they can't see us. Someone gets out, and now 1 dead dude's in the car, driving off into the distance. We are missing at least 1 person from the car.
Eyewitness testimony doesn't hold up?
I guess not.
But I do think it's the water's
it's very
not gonna,
poetic.
It's poetic. The water's not going to wash out the blood.
And also, I don't watch a Miike film expecting a fully bulletproof plot. Let's be real here.
No, not at all. But
this is maybe the tightest one I've watched so far.
Yeah, but it's also a nice moment too because after that they run into the real Ryuji with a pregnant woman. It's a nice end cap to Monica's arc because it's the last piece of her past that she can say goodbye to in order to move on. Yes. Because it's obviously Ryuji still cares a little bit, but
he bothers to stop and say hi.
Well, and also as she runs away, he kind of turns around, but he's with the pregnant woman who stops him. But it also shows that...
But even she's like, are you sure you're okay? You're dripping wet and it looks cold outside.
Yeah, they're just caring people.
Yeah, they seem nice.
But it also shows that while Monica was dwelling on the past, her past moved past her.
Yes, very much
moved on into the future. But it also sets that it's only the future for them to look forward to.
Very much so, because the way that they're set up across the train from each other, it almost feels like a projection of what they could be if they just would get their lives together.
Exactly. And we do get that because now Leo has more pep in his training compared to the opening.
Yeah, and he's trying.
And it's you can actually see it because he's getting hyped up over it. And it's paralleled with Monica's battle in rehab. Yeah. And some nice montage of back and forth of them fighting their battles. And Leo in the ring, he has a shouting victory now. He's excited.
Actually is excited to be there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the ending is
so good. Mwah.
It's such a nice and simple ending because the rest of this movie's been anti-romance.
It has.
But it ends with that little hope of Leo and Yuri entering an apartment as it snows.
And the best part, though, is it's zoomed back. We are not up close in their lives anymore. We don't care what happens, which, from a film standpoint, kind of indicates that, they have moved past this crazy adventure. They are just having a normal life now. The rest of the world is also still happening. And
it could be someone else, too.
It could be.
It's just a nice, hopeful ending to it.
It very much is.
Yeah.
It's nice.
And honestly, these are the kind of movies I like because, one, they aren't amazing, but they're fun enough where, the heart keeps me interested.
Sure. I can see that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is... the name of it too is I think it's a little misleading and trying to put that Leo is Yuri's first love.
Because he's not really, is he?
No, he's not. It's Ryuji is the first love that sets all this into motion. And it feels like an immature high school love to look up to someone because they were the only person who was nice to them in a shitty existence as far as we know. And it only happened as far as we know one time.
Yeah.
So it's that first love, quote unquote love, and then it's the first real love.
It's a more mature love.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is because doesn't she mention too that her love with the first guy was in high school when she was still a kid, and granted, I get some people their high school crushes their ride and die, that's who they're with forever, which power to you. But for a lot of people, their high school crush was an immature love. It was not who they really were yet, and that person that they loved wasn't who they were done cooking to be yet.
Yeah, you like someone because of their looks, or you like someone because someone else said that they were a nice person.
And then it is also interesting, though, because it's assumed that they must, text or call or write letters or something while she's in rehab for a while, because, otherwise, how would they have stayed in touch? Seems like she's there for a minute. Mm-hmm. He has time to build somewhat of a boxing career while she's there. That doesn't happen overnight. But it does feel like they have, even though they bonded over a shitty, tragic experience, which while a good friend can make a long-lasting relationship, probably not.
Mhm.
This does feel like they had time to realize they had a connection, build it, and at the end of the movie, because it's so simply done, you don't have to worry about, like, will this relationship work like a lot of other romance-centered movies do.
Mhm.
You just get to enjoy the fact that they're happy together.
Exactly. And so it is kind of like that anti-romance of it's almost a first date, but it's also like a story you're not going to tell your children about.
Sure, and I think a lot of it boils down to that this movie's really not centered around their love. It just happens during all this other crap.
Yeah, well, it's also they get to live normal lives. They had
Mhm.
one weird night,
Yeah.
and it has heart. It's like, it feels like what's Date Night. Is
Yeah.
that the movie?
Yeah.
Where that tried having a message, but this one didn't.
Sure. No, I can see the parallels there. The difference really boils down to one was trying to reignite an already existing love. The focus was on the love. This one, the focus is on the action and the adventure, and at the end, produced a love story.
Yeah, it's about the journey, not the result, 100%.
Very much so.
Yeah, so Chris, First Love, good, bad, weird.
For me, this is a good and weird. It's not terribly weird. It's not Miike full level weird, so maybe weird in small letters. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I thought there was a lot of good action. The humor was nice, dark, but not overly, like, done or anything. This was a fun time.
Yeah, I gotta give it a good, bad. And I give it bad because some of the editing, some of the writing is a little rough.
It's a little rough.
And with a subtleness of weirdness, because
It's a touch. It's been touched by the Miike hand.
Yeah, but it doesn't go like full Gozu, Full Metal Yakuza Apocalypse.
I agree fully. It is touched by the hand. It is not tainted by the hand.
Yeah, showing a mellowing with his age.
Honestly, I was going to bring that up. Like, especially since we've spent so much time with Miike in the last few years. This movie, I think, touches on a lot of his tropes. It has a lot of the humor that we have seen him develop over the years. I think this is a great iteration of his style of gore and horror, where, like, he has maintained the extra goriness with the extra noises and the extra, like, deaths, but we don't see them in this one. You know, he touches on the taboo sexuality, topics that he's well known for, without going necessarily too far by Miike standards. Depends on who you are, but by Miike standards, not too far. Very tasteful for Miike, one might argue. This feels like a very mature and rounded, like, Miike film. This feels very approachable. This feels like he has all of his thoughts boiled down and thought through in a way that makes it accessible for others to talk about.
Well, and maybe it's the writer behind it too, because, like, I mean, if you watch any more of, like, Miike's recent stuff, like Lumberjack the Killer,
sure,
that movie, while a bunch of pseudoscience mumbo jumbo,
of course,
that one goes back to, like, the old style of Miike without crossing that line. It keeps a very grounded Miike, and honestly, I'm still curious what this dude's doing, because he's overseeing. I'm very excited for this. I just found this out like a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Have you seen the announcement for Night of the Living Dead?
No, I have not seen this announcement.
It's an animated cat zombie apocalypse movie.
My God,
the cats are the zombies. He is He is the head of it. So
okay, I am interested. Here's the thing with Miike, and this is something that, like, if you are a big fan of especially some of his earlier works or some of his really big, well-known works, your argument is always that he attacks problems and topics that others don't necessarily want to show. And I'm all for that. I think, though, that it takes a level of maturity and self-reflectiveness to realize that always handling things full force, full volume will not get yourself into everyone's hands. And if you're trying to make a point, if you're trying to get people into a topic that you're passionate about, having other places for other people to start is necessary. This feels like, for Miike, a fantastic, like, conglomeration of a lot of his passions that we know him well for, that we like him for, and having this toned in a very mature, but still fun, still action-packed, still having all the themes that we want to talk about as Miike fans,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to use this as kind of a starting ground for other movies and other topics with his works. I think this shows a lot of development as a director.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I was wrong. It's Lumberjack the Monster, not Lumberjack the Killer. But
You know what? You were really close.
yeah, I'm bad with some names.
It's
but...
okay. He has a lot of movies. I think we're well over 100 now.
Oh yeah, including TV shows too.
The TV shows ones definitely add up.
So, Chris, do you recommend First Love?
I do recommend First Love, and I know normally I put a big asterisk on a Miike film because there is a Miike film for everyone. Not all Miike is for everyone. This one is a great first step for a Miike interested person. Granted, with that said, there is 2 scenes that maybe you want to skip, but I think most people, if you watch normal, like, Amazon Prime based movies or Netflix inspired films, you will have been exposed to worse already because that's the world we live in. So I think this is a good, safe recommendation for everyone to start with, and then start from there deciding what Miike film you want to watch next.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely do recommend this one. If you drag the bottom of the extreme movie barrel, this one is extremely tame.
It is extremely tame, but this is why it's recommendable.
Yeah, no, that's 100% because it is at its core, it is a very cheesy Yakuza Chinese triad crime shitty crime movie, but yes, it's got heart.
It's got a lot of heart. I really, really enjoyed it, and I was surprised at how readily I was ready to tell other people who are not Miike fans, who are not interested in normally what you and I will watch, how readily I was ready to be like, okay, so next person in line to watch this is this person because they like horror. Next person in line to watch this is this person because they like dark humor. This one really does build really well. Yeah.
Nope, I agree. Now it's time for season 6 bingo.
Yes.
New season, well, almost end of season.
Not new season.
A new game. Chris and I are playing bingo and you can too. Rules for players are simple. 1 stamp per card per episode. Cards can be found on our socials at tgtbtw_podcast on Instagram, and Threads and tgtbtw podcast on Twitter, or feel free to email us the request at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. You can use any of the 3 bingo card variations, but each stamp must be associated with this season 6 episode. First place is already selected. Second place gets to choose a deep dive and 1 micro review. Third place gets to choose 2 micro reviews. Fourth and fifth place get to choose a micro review. So feel free to share at us on social media or for participation. Rules for us are slightly different. We've already won, but we get a total of 2 stamps per deep dive. First to get a bingo in either any of the good, bad, or weird categories gets to choose their movie for that for season 7. So
fantastic.
Chris, what are you going with?
I am shocked that for a Miike film, I can't use the square butt stuff on my weird card. Normally that's an easy in, standard, ready to go square for a Miike film. I'm a little amazed, honestly, that I'm not allowed that one today. I will, however, be using maybe arguably a bit of a cheat, but Nikke shoehorns Takashi Miike in where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Which does give me an unusable bingo in the good square.
Yeah, I mean, I referenced 5 of his other movies today.
We went hard, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, I have 1 more. I'm running out of squares, so it's kind of getting hard.
Yeah, maybe we're at the end of doing this posthumously.
We are. I'm going to use the Why That Angle specifically for the animated scene in this film, which does also give me an unusable weird bingo.
I'll give that to you.
Thank you.
I am torn on my good card.
Reasonable.
Because the solid kills.
They are.
But I also really like the showing not telling in this movie because there's a couple bits where it's really, really good.
I agree. Especially the violence in this one I think was excellently done.
And while I want to do a solid kill for this one and get my second good bingo.
Understandable.
I'm going to go with showing not telling.
Very reasonable because this one really did a great job.
I'm going to go with my bad humor.
Okay.
Because of the guy not talking very well because I don't think that was quite good.
I will go with it.
But that's going to be the last of our Miike. I can guarantee you, dear listeners, we have the rest of the season planned out. So No more Miike, sadly, but
Everyone breathes a sigh of relief.
next week we do get a guest episode with a very good buddy who
Very excited.
hasn't been on the show in a very long time.
Yep.
It's a very logical decision where we get another version of anti-romance, one where we get to see the seed of the evil.
That was terrible and I love it.
Yeah, then we got another deep dive on another action-packed movie,
Mm-hmm.
but a little bit more domestic with a little bit of foreignness to it.
It'll be good times.
Yeah, it'll be a rush.
Ha.
But anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace! Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or tgtbtw for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace!